Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz, and tonight we're going to break down the Vikings' 19-13 victory over the Bears on Monday Night Football. Also go over some waiver wire goodness ahead of Week 11. Happy Week 11 now, everybody. I'm talking to you right now at 11:19 Eastern Time in the PM. Just watched this, not great Monday night game, but it got the job done. I enjoyed it enough. Football is football, right? And we got, plenty of more games on the way, and the fantasy playoffs are not that far away. So thank you guys always for tuning into the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. New episodes every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, trying to make you as informed as possible. If we can have a little fun along the way, why not? So without further ado, let's get to this matchup. Captain Kirk Cousins has gotten the Monday Night Football monkey off his back. There's an awesome Office Space graphic during this game, showing the guys just beating the crap out of a computer that had Cousins, infamous just winless record on Monday Night Football, was able to get it done in this one. So good game from Kirk. Completed 25 of 36 passes, 292 yards, and an interception. The interception wasn't exactly great, but Khalil Mack just kind of got him in a nice little zone drop. So that'll happen. We see a couple games a year where Kirk Cousins just really can't do anything right. It happened week 2 against the Colts. Might have already been another one this year. If not, expect it moving forward. But truly, over these past 2 seasons, under Gary Kubiak with the, offense really just going through Dalvin Cook as much as possible, we haven't seen Cousins just put up gaudy fantasy numbers because he hasn't had the passing volume. But in terms of efficiency, truly, Kirk Cousins has been playing the best ball of his career over these past 2 years. He always gets all this shit for not performing, well in the prime time and the big games and all that. Look, he made some of the biggest throws in that win they had over the Saints in the playoffs last year. I understand things went crashing down against the 49ers soon afterwards, but just realize Cousins, even if his Vikings tenure hasn't really been the, Super Bowl just goodness that people, I guess, were hoping for when it originally happened, the guy, has been able to make some big time throws over the years. And while we didn't see, any just marvelous plays in this one, still pretty nice touchdown to Adam Thielen that he hauled in with one hand in the back of the end zone. Also plenty of connections to Justin Jefferson. So Kirk Cousins, again, he's not going to be someone that's going to be super far up on the radar. Maybe next week, though, against the Dallas Cowboys, is a solid streamer option for sure in that one. But just realize, 36 pass attempts in this game, that's pretty tough to come by usually for him. So I think in matchups where maybe they have a little bit more success running the ball, we're not going to see the same sort of volume. Either way, good game from Kirk. And again, respect the efficiency a little bit. I understand he doesn't have the same, counting numbers as some other guys, but still a pretty solid performance. With this backfield, Dalvin Cook had 30 carries, 496 scoreless yards. Just couldn't really get going at all. He had a chunk 36-yard run at one point on a 3rd and 1, but got brought back on a hold by Kyle Rudolph. Probably wouldn't have had the long run if it wasn't for the hold. So I always got to be careful when we're talking about, these nullified plays. But Dalvin Cook really got going in the 4th quarter, which, hey, he hit 30 rush attempts. Isn't that what the old heads say? You got to get those body blows in first for defense softens up. Whatever it was, we still saw him making dudes miss. Just didn't have a ton of rushing room throughout the game. Bears defense was doing a great job. Roquan Smith in particular, halfway through this one, cool stat from PFF's own Steve Palozzo, where it was just since week 6, I believe, Roquan Smith is the 4th highest graded defender in the entire National Football League. So he was out there making a bunch of plays, but we still did see that vintage Dalvin Cook a time or two in terms of him just breaking tackles, making something out of nothing. So wasn't a massive blow performance. He's just been kind of hanging week after week after week, but don't get it twisted. Him and Alvin Kamara are sitting atop the running back rankings for as long as Christian McCaffrey is sidelined. Even once McCaffrey gets back, I think it's going to be hard to kind of bump those guys out of the top 2. So it seemed like at one point Dalvin got hurt. He actually left the field, but I was worried it was a groin. It seems like maybe he just got the wind knocked out of him. Either way, came back in afterwards, looked as good as ever. He ended up playing, 56 snaps. Amir Abdullah only had 3, and Alexander Madison only had 3. So unofficial counts, we'll see what it finishes at, but that's pretty good to see him moving forward because Dalvin Cook, while they always make sure to get him plenty of touches, he really hasn't been this guy that's, flirting with that 90% plus snap mark. It did seem like he was that way tonight, and good, you want to pay the guy, like why not play him on the field as much as possible? And not every team has to be like the Titans and only play their stud running back on half your offensive snaps. Offense is always going to be better with Dalvin Cook on the field, and even if he didn't have the huge game that we've grown accustomed to in this one, still 96 rushing yards and also caught 4 passes for another 16 yards there. So anytime we can get this sort of usage, people, we have to go to the well. And remember, when I'm talking about that kind of usage, when you consider benching Duke Johnson this upcoming week, because again, it's just so tough to find these running backs that have these sort of every down roles, even in games where they don't, even in games where they don't have the scores and they don't have the big plays. We got to go back to the well with these guys more weeks than not. with his Vikings passing game. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen had great games. Jefferson caught 8 of 10 targets, 135 yards, had a 54-yard catch and run that it was a little bit of a blown coverage. Just seemed like more miscommunication than anything. He kind of found his way up the field in the zone, but 54 yards, showing some true yak ability. I mean, there really isn't anything Jefferson can't do on the field. We've seen the contested ball skills. We've seen just the dripping swagger week after week after week, and the guy's also got the route running and yak ability to boot. So credit to the Vikings. A lot of people gave them kind of crap for the way they handled the Stephon Diggs situation, and Stephon Diggs is anyone's idea of one of the best wide receivers in the league. I mean, I think the Vikings would be a better team if they still had Stephon Diggs, but going from Diggs to Jefferson, about as well as you could have hoped it to go. Still, no one's saying Justin Jefferson is better than Stephon Diggs, but just in terms of how this could have gone with another receiver they drafted and whatnot, I mean, this version of the Vikings offense still looking very lethal, even though they got rid of one of the best wide receivers in the league. Got to give their front office some kudos with that. Adam Thielen caught 4 of 7 targets for 43 yards and a pair of touchdowns. Mentioned the first one, 17 yards, one-hander in the end zone was beautiful. Second one was more on the goal line, had a real nice route and was just able to break outside, get the corner on skates, and converted a touchdown. So great game from him. Also saw Kyle Rudolph, 4 catches, 63 yards, had some nice yak, but did lose a fumble in the first drive of the game. Other than that, nobody had over 20 receiving yards. Only other note I would make is that I think, every time we see a Vikings game in primetime or just in general now, they mention how Chad Beebe is the son of former Buffalo Bills stud Don Beebe. We freaking get it already. You mention this every single broadcast. This is becoming the new Chris Hogan plays lacrosse tidbit that you bring up every single time because it's a fun fact. But guess what? Everyone knows the fun fact. Chill. We get it. The guy's dad was dope. Chill, all right? He's a slot receiver for the Vikings that, catches a ball or two every other couple weeks. Nothing against Chad Beebe. Just don't need to hear about his dad every single time he catches a pass in one of these games. So now that I got that out of my system, let's talk about the Chicago Bears and really the only person that matters in maybe the entire state of Illinois at this point, and that is my guy, Cordarrelle Patterson. And look, you can call me flawed, you can call me biased because I am the president of the Cordarrelle Patterson fan club, and this is a responsibility I take very seriously. Came to you guys on the very first podcast of this episode and told you all about that, and it was CP's night. I absolutely loved it. He housed a kick return touchdown because he's the best kick returner of all time, everybody. I did not say punt returner. I said kick returner. Cordarrelle doesn't do punts. You can give that honor to Devin Hester, whoever you wanted to give it to, but Cordarrelle, kick returner, goodness. I mean, when he got this ball, just went right up the field to open up the second half, 104 yards to the house. After that, the Vikings were trying to kick it anywhere but to their former first-round pick. So I get so sick and tired of, the bust label being thrown out because you really want to hand that out to the greatest kick returner of all time, someone that entering 2020 was the league's most efficient rusher in NFL history, someone that because he's a running back that everyone called a wide receiver. Like, he gets no credit for now being a running back that can play wide receiver better than a lot of regular wide receivers can. Just the ultimate Swiss Army knife of the NFL. I love watching Cordarrelle Patterson play football. You see him on special teams. The guy's selfless. He's great with fans before the games, after the games. Cordarrelle Patterson makes football teams better, and he has done it throughout his entire career. Sick visor, lines up everywhere. The only team to ever give Cordarrelle Patterson even 60 touches in the season won the Super Bowl. Not saying, just saying. Glad I got that out of my system. This is what happens when the Bears play in primetime. I get pumped, and I was happy to see my guy have a big game. Wasn't quite so great on the ground, but you know what? No one was really all that great on the ground. Cordarrelle had 12 carries for 30 yards. Artavis Pierce, 3 carries, 9 yards. Ryan Nall, 1 carry, 0 yards. Did not see much of Lamar Miller. I was kind of expecting Miller to potentially be the lead guy. He has the most kind of proven 3-down skill set of these remaining backs, but it ended up being a situation where Nall played 11 snaps. Artavis Pierce played 6. Lamar only had 5, and Cordarrelle led the way in the backfield with 25 snaps. So he wasn't out there all the time. I mean, it was a situation where the Bears only ran in the kind of the low 40s of total offensive plays. Darnell Mooney led all wide receivers and running backs in total snaps. So, it wasn't like Cordarrelle was out there for, 80% plus. I don't think it's going to be a situation where they're going to go back to the well with him. Wouldn't be shocked if they take a gander at, old friend Jordan Howard or something. But it was an enjoyable experience. I'm so happy Cordarrelle got that kick return touchdown. Great play from him. But yeah, this running game remains a disaster. Look, going into this game, Jets and the Bears are the only two teams in the league averaging less than 1 yard before contact. per attempt. So just one of these situations where Tariq Cohen couldn't do it, David Montgomery couldn't do it. I don't think anybody can do it in this backfield. So with the receivers, Allen Robinson caught 6 of 9 targets, 43 yards. Anthony Miller, 2 of 7 targets, 28 yards. Nobody else even had over 20 receiving yards, and that included Darnell Mooney, just 2 catches for 3 yards. No downfield shots for Mooney. We've been kind of having him as this sneaky, just waiver ad that you can put out there with some confidence, but he can be dropping pretty much all leagues if he's not even going to be getting the fantasy-friendly air yards that he has most of the time. With Allen Robinson, just a situation where, okay, 9 targets aren't bad, but they didn't exactly give him too many chances downfield. Just a lot of design stuff in this one, and that was all just short, and it seemed gimmicky, and it seemed like, honestly, the same kind of stuff that we've seen Nagy doing over the years, and I know he gave the play calling duties to Laser in this one, but didn't exactly, bring the results they wanted, and, I think Nick Foles deserves some blame for that as well. Ended up going 15 for 26, 106 yards, and an interception. The interception went off of Anthony Miller's hands, but it was, a pretty tall pass, and he also threw another one later in the game where it was on 4th down, had Anthony Miller breaking open deep down the middle. It was close. Louis Riddick was saying on the broadcast that it's a ball that Anthony Miller had to catch. On the replay, it seemed like it really went off his fingertips. I like Anthony Miller a lot, so maybe I'm being, a little too easy on the guy, but it did seem to me like 2 passes that, wow, okay, Miller in the best case scenario world would have come down with it, but also put the ball on the guy. Like, he was pretty wide open on both these plays, and the fact that it was as hard as it was, while it would have been nice if Miller would have caught it, it's also a situation where all throughout this year, really since that Falcons game, Foles has struggled to consistently put it on his guys down the field. So not great. Hopefully Foles is okay. He got hit really hard at the end of the 4th quarter trying to bring him back and had to be taken off on a stretcher. He was sitting up. So, with Trubisky dealing with the shoulder injury, it was Tyler Bray's season. Makes you wonder, you don't want to play hindsight doctor here and, with looking at past quarterback decisions and who teams could have drafted and re-signed. You look at this Bears team, it's impossible to escape the question. What if they had re-signed Chase Daniel before this season? So I don't know, again, I don't want to be the guy that says, oh, they could have drafted this guy or done that. But, you just wonder what that sort of backup leadership could have brought into this team in their time of trials. So again, Vikings 19, Bears 13, not the greatest primetime game I've ever seen, but we got Seahawks Cardinals on the way Thursday night, everybody, and some solid primetime games after that. Last thing I would mention, that's about it. So one quick thing, shout out to our sponsors, all first-time depositors at Monkey Knife Fight that put at least $20 in their account while using promo code PFF or receive a free PFF Edge annual subscription. That's a $40 value for just $20, and you'll get the opportunity to turn that $20 into even more money playing daily fantasy and prop games at one of the fastest-growing fantasy sports sites in the USA and Monkey Knife Fight. So go to Monkey Knife Fight, deposit your $20 with promo code PFF today to receive your free PFF Edge annual subscription. All right, everybody, as always, on the Tuesday edition of this podcast, I like to go through some of the top waiver wire options. Now, these are not guys that I'm all recommending. I'm going to talk about what I think about them, but, I've gone through a couple of articles, just kind of the Yahoo, ESPN, who's available, transaction trends, just trying to get, a grip on the guys I think are going to be popping up, more articles around the week, more discussions, try to get an opinion out on them. So without further ado, let's get going. We got some Miami Dolphins, Salvon Ahmed and Tua Tagovailoa. I'll work on the pronunciation. That's on me. It's my job. We'll get there. I haven't learned how to spell Tua's last name, so I'm getting better. But they got a fairly juicy matchup against the Broncos. But I would put the Broncos right in there with the 49ers, where it's a defense that has lost a lot of their great pieces, and they aren't nearly as elite as they could be. But they are so well coached that when a rookie quarterback coming in, I don't think this is a cake matchup. And for that reason, I am not looking to stream Tua this week. I'd much rather go the with a Kirk Cousins or a Matthew Stafford or someone like that, where hey. Maybe we know a little bit more what we're getting there. But with Tua, at this point, he's 3-0 as a starter. He's playing solid turnover-free football, and he's doing what they want him to do, which is just, control the game, don't lose the game, let the defense and run game kind of take over. And, because of this, we've only seen him throw 22, 28, and 25 passes, and he has a combined 15 rushes for 34 yards and 0 scores on the ground. So we don't have any rushing floor. We don't have really any passing ceiling. And now it's a situation where, other than Devontae Parker, we got Jakeem Grant, maybe Antonio Callaway, Mike Gesicki playing not as much as he should. There's just not a ton of high-end talent around Tua at this point. So he is not someone I'm looking to stream this week. I don't think you need him on your fantasy football roster in the year 2020. Now, Ahmed, a little more interesting. He ended up playing 77% snaps on Sunday, had 21 carries and 1 target. Patrick Laird just 16% snaps. DeAndre Washington at 7% snaps. Jordan Howard's been released, which is a real shame. I hope someone gives him a chance, not because I think he can actually help their football team or anything, but I just want to see this season-long vulture kind of stat line he's got going. I want this to push its limits. I want him to go on the Chiefs, and I want the Chiefs to, run out of bounds at the 1-yard line every single drive so we can see how many carries and just how many few yards with also getting touchdowns Jordan Howard can get. Because this year, 28 carries, 33 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 reception, -3 yards, 0 scores. So absolute madness from Jordan Howard this year. I hope he gets another opportunity. But with these Dolphins, so Ahmed, he's going to be the guy at least in week 11, it seems like. Maybe. If Matt Breida stays out with his hamstring, he had a questionable tag last week and didn't play. It seems like Breida might come back and just be kind of the pass down back. But the problem is that Myles Gaskin is out at least one more game, but we haven't gotten any kind of clear word on him. But when Rappaport and Schefter originally announced it did kind of sound like Brian Flores was saying he's going to miss 3 games. Not that he's going to miss, more than 3 games or at least 3 games, but it seemed like they were indicating 3 games was the timetable. So maybe I'm wrong on that. Hopefully we get more update on Gaskin moving forward. But again, I just think this has been a pretty, volatile situation ever since Gaskin has left the picture. And removing Howard from the equation helps, but this was DeAndre Washington's first game in the picture. Could see his role increase. Ahmed's not someone that I'm, trying to use the rest of my fab on because, again, I think his, total touches and just kind of domination of this backfield could end as early as this week. And, best case scenario, probably week 12, maybe week 13 whenever Gaskin is back in the picture. Jameis Winston is facing the Falcons this week with Drew Brees having multiple broken ribs, and it sounds like he'll be out at least 2 weeks. So do we go back to Jameis? I don't really think he's a priority at everyone. It pains me to say this. I love watching Jameis Winston play football. For better and for worse, he makes football better. And he's, one of the more entertaining quarterbacks in the league. But you look at the usage from last week, and Winston played 32 of 35 second half snaps. Taysom Hill, he was in there for 15 reps, but they were really letting Jameis play the actual quarterback position. So when Sean Payton comes out and says that he's not going to name a starting quarterback, we fully expected to be Jameis Winston out there. But here's the problem. Last year when Teddy Bridgewater was their quarterback, they really used less Taysom Hill than normal. And Sean Payton even said about that, with Teddy learning the system, we didn't want to be pulling him in and out of the game. So that's fine. Winston's going to be back there. I'm not saying that Taysom Hill, taking quarterback snaps away is going to be the problem. I think it's going to be Taysom Hill just taking away rush attempts, because we saw in this one, as Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray kind of getting their usual rushing doses, but it was Taysom just getting fed more than usual. And you know what? Unlike last year, with Taysom being really in his last year, he was on last year of his deal, but now Saints have 16.3 million reasons why they should continue to utilize their Swiss Army knife as much as possible. So I guess it's going to be Winston under center, but I think it's going to be more of a run-first version of this offense. And even more concerningly, look, the reason why Jameis has been such a fantasy-friendly quarterback is because he loves throwing downfield. And because he's so erratic, he'll throw interceptions, but interceptions aren't even that bad in fantasy football if it just means that it's going to lead to higher scoring games and more pass attempts. So the fact that so many leagues only, penalize an interception by -1, absolutely wild. Again, if we're trying to replicate real life football in fantasy, you would think interceptions would be far more painful than that, but it's the way it is. And because of that, we've seen Jameis, even though, no one's ever really considered him anything close to an elite real life quarterback, he really has been a great fantasy quarterback over the years. But I don't think we're getting that same DGAF gunslinger here moving forward, because Winston's average target depth in week 10 was 5.1 yards. He has never, his previous single game low was 7.6 yards during his 5 years with the Buccaneers. So truly 2.5 yards lower than his previous single game low. And normally, he's never finished below 10.8 yards average target depth in the season. So I get it. This is an incredible small sample size in the second half of a game that they were up in. It wasn't a situation where Winston, would have been asked to throw downfield that much. But like we saw with Teddy in this offense, I don't think they really are changing it too much around their backup quarterbacks. I think they have their Drew Brees system, and they're asking the backups to play into that system, unless you're Taysom Hill, who, just is the system, if you ask Sean Payton, I guess. So look, I'm rooting for Jameis, but I just think that we're seeing, a less gunslinger happy version. They want to freaking run the ball, and I just think there's going to be a little too much Taysom Hill involved in the overall game plan, not necessarily like quarterback, to help Jameis out. So this week I've been ranked as my QB 19. I believe you can check out my QB ranking article. It'll be up. It is up today on Tuesday. And yeah, so with Winston, I'm rooting for the guy. I just don't think, in this version of the Saints offense, we're really going to see him put up the sort of fantasy numbers that we grew used to seeing in Tampa Bay. With this Patriots backfield, so Damien Harris and Rex Burkhead are two kind of popular waiver wire additions ahead of this matchup with the Texans. I would just say, we saw last week with Patriots getting up a lot in the Ravens, and Harris ended up playing 55% snaps and got those 22 carries. Like, that was his best case scenario. When they can get up multiple scores in games, they're going to run the piss out of the ball, and that guy's Damien Harris for now. Sony Michel has been practicing. We don't know what his status is because he's on the injured reserve list, so they don't have to report his participation. But look, this year, only Nick Chubb has averaged more yards after contact per rush than Sony Michel. I understand he's disappointed coming out of Georgia. He's really looked pedestrian at times, but before he got hurt this season, we were actually seeing some of the best, film out of Sony Michel since he's entered the NFL. So Damien Harris hasn't been bad, in that sample, again, with Sony Michel being number 2 in yards after contact per rush among 79 guys. Damien Harris is 18, so they've both been good, but I don't think, Damien has necessarily played so well that they're going to not use a healthy Sony Michel. And in that case, now we could be talking about an already messy 3-back backfield getting to 4-back. So Cam Newton, he's on pace to score 17 freaking rushing touchdowns this year. It's already been hard enough for Harris to get those carries inside the 5-yard line. We already need to, just guess when they're going to have this positive game script to get him over that 15 carry mark to begin with. I just don't think it's a situation that's going to, clear out anytime soon without injuries. And we're getting the opposite of injuries. We're getting Sony Michel coming back in the picture. So, I am not looking to touch this Patriots backfield with the 10-foot pole as long as everyone remains healthy. Same thing goes with Rex and James White. If one of those guys is out, the other one can put up some big numbers. But when they are together, we've seen this again and again and again, nothing resembling consistent production. Moving on to another backfield that just doesn't seem to have any sort of, clarity coming anytime soon. That is with the Indianapolis Colts. Impressive game last Thursday night from them, just romping the Titans. Good for them on that one. But yeah, so Nyheim Hines went 12 carries, 70 yards, and 1 touchdown on the ground. Also 5 carries, 45 yards, and 1 touchdown receiving. So the fact they were up a lot in this game, and Nyheim Hines still kind of dominated the snap share, was impressive to see. But look, this isn't the first time we've seen Hines have a huge performance and then just not get featured afterwards. We'll see what happens in week 11 and beyond. But don't forget, Hines had that 2 touchdown performance in week 1, and everyone signed him. And then he had 1 single touch in week 2. So look, just like when I came here and said after the big Jordan Wilkins game, this is still a 3-back backfield. We can't let one good performance change that fact. It's been a 3-back backfield all season. Frank Reich has been a committee coach pretty much his entire career, and I'm not expecting that to change. So look, these are some talented backs, and even Jonathan Taylor's probably gonna have better days ahead. But if there's anything we know about this Colts backfield now, it's that nobody is going to break free and be that number 1 guy. So while Nyheim Hines is a reasonable guy to have, on your fantasy bench, again, it's going to be a situation where we're going to have to be really careful because, the wrong game script, and he's going to be one of the lower floor guys out there. So no, I don't think Nyheim Hines is someone that you need to chase and be expecting, take over as this lead back in Indy. Another guy with the Colts is rookie wide receiver Michael Pittman. So he had, that huge 7-catch, 101 yards in no-score game that last Thursday night. But I would just say, make sure you go back and watch those highlights because while he looked pretty good running, free in the open field, the really big catch and run where everyone's, tweeting, oh, look at Michael Pittman, here comes the breakout game. Like literally nobody guarded him. And he just caught a crosser and ran, 40, 45 yards down inside the 10-yard line. So yeah, he looks good when nobody guards him. And I'm not saying he didn't have some nice catches in that game, but to me, just watching that, a lot of the production just seemed to kind of be more just because the Titans didn't know what they were doing and less of Michael Pittman just really emerging as the true alpha number 1 in Indy. No wide receiver has been able to do anything in this offense all season long. Marcus Johnson had 108 yards in week 6, and then, like I said, Pittman had 170 yards last week. Those are the only 2 times all season that a wide receiver from the Colts has had over 75 receiving yards. So, look, with the Colts, Rivers wants to spread it out. He spreads it out to all his positions. I just don't think Pittman's going to, be getting enough consistent target share here moving forward to just have anything resembling, just high-end production. With T. Higgins and the Bengals, look, we saw like a similar usage shift here, and it's good. Pittman is now starting firmly in 3 wide receiver sets with Marcus Johnson out of the picture. So we kind of got that T. Higgins, that Justin Jefferson usage bump, but the difference is that, Justin Jefferson is the clear-cut number 2 wide receiver, clear-cut number 2 pass game option in his offense. Higgins isn't, but he's at least in, an offense where Burrow has the most dropbacks in the league. Pittman is unfortunately still in a muddled, pecking order and is in more of a run-first offense. So I just don't think really any pass catcher from the Colts is worth the time of day here moving forward in 2020. We'll talk about Kalen Ballage here facing the Jets. Chargers RB1 over these past few weeks. So I do think that Kalen Ballage is probably the fantasy RB to prioritize in the waiver wire this week. And hey, just another guy that got away from Adam Gase and is going on and balling out like we always thought he maybe could. But don't think of Kalen Ballage as the guy that averaged, 2.3 yards per carry or whatever the awful mark was in those Miami days. I mean, look, he's 6'2", 228 pounds, 4.46 40-yard dash. He is a big, fast dude, and he has the trust of this Chargers coaching staff. 73% snaps last week, 18 carries, 6 targets. Week 1-2 superstar Joshua Kelly had 27% snaps, 7 carries, 0 targets. Justin Jackson's, on the IR with this knee injury. Troymaine Pope is someone that we saw pop up a couple of weeks ago, but, we saw him active for this game, but he just didn't even have a snap to his name, so he's out of the concussion protocol, but apparently they are happy having Kalen Ballage be out there. So Eckler, he came out and tweeted last Thursday to all my fantasy owners that didn't drop me. The time draws near. He put a skull emoji out there, people. I mean, Eckler's trying to talk to us, but apparently on his Twitch stream, he also said that he hopes to be back by week 13. So I'm worried about, Ahmed maybe being irrelevant as early as this week. Wayne Gallman's got a bye this week. Cam Akers is in a crowded committee. Colts and Patriots crowded committees. I think Kalen Ballage is the one guy in the waiver wire this week potentially that could give you not just 1, but 2, maybe even 3 weeks as, a legit RB2. So not someone I'm going to go crazy about ranking the top 10 or 12 or anything like that. But I do think, Kalen Ballage with this sort of usage and against, a Jets team that we're certainly expecting the Chargers to run up points on the scoreboard against, we can't treat him as the legit top 20 option at the position in week 11 and potentially a week or 2 beyond. Also, we'll talk about Sammy Watkins real quick. It does seem like coming out of the bye that he is going to be able to return from this hamstring injury that's had him sidelined for quite some time. So Sammy, started off the year as he always does. Balls out in week 1 in the playoffs, and that's about it. 7 catches, 82 yards in the score. Nothing over 65 yards after that. But, as we saw in the playoffs last year, he's out there all the time. They trust him, on the field as much as Tyreek Hill. And we want guys in this Chiefs offense. So obviously, Sammy, he's going to be anyone's idea of an upside wide receiver 3, more weeks than not, nothing more than that, even after big games. We've seen this same old song and dance out of him, hard to trust. But hey, it's still a situation where we've seen really out of the last 8 games from Sammy, if you include the playoffs from last year, which I don't know why we shouldn't. It's, the highest level of football we could ever ask for. Sammy has been putting up some solid numbers. So again, he's probably free out there, I imagine, unless your league has a bunch of IR spots. People haven't really been going out of their way to hoard Sammy Watkins on their bench, but you can do worse than someone that's going to be the potential number 3 pass game option in this Chiefs offense more weeks than not. Unfortunately, this does mean this should be the end of a Mecole Hardman's season. So I just want to point out, Mecole was one of the guys I missed on with, just really being a little overconfident on him in the preseason. And yeah, I was chasing the talent over opportunity. It's worked out mostly with A.J. Brown, not so much with Mecole Hardman. But truly, just don't be the guy that says Mecole Hardman sucks. If you want to say, hey, you can't run block well enough to earn a consistent spot in this offense, and they just already have so much speed, you can make a nuanced argument about it. I understand that. But Mecole Hardman last year was number 1 in the NFL with 13.1 yards per target. In 2020, he's number 3 in the NFL with 12 yards per target. So you throw the ball to Mecole Hardman, good things happen. Good things have always happened when they try to get Mecole Hardman more involved. A couple of Packers receivers now. We got Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Allen Lazard facing the Colts. So, look, MVS, week 1, 4 catches, 96 yards in the score. Week 2, 3 catches, 64 yards. Then he had 5 straight games with fewer than 50 yards and 0 scores. And then over these last 2 weeks, he's had 2 catches, 53 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And most recently, 4 catches for 149 yards and a score. He's played 80% snaps in every game since week 3. His role did not change with or without Devontae Adams. He's always been out there. He is their outside field stretching wide receiver. It's a boomer bust role. These targets down the field are real volatile. We can't project any sort of just week to week consistency with it. And that's exactly what we've seen all season. So I think, it's going to be even more busty once Lazard gets back in the picture. We've seen Rodgers, prioritize him as, their true number 2 wide receiver in the offense. I mean, when Adams went down, Lazard had that huge game against the Saints where he was the one getting all the extra targets and the extra opportunity. They really just haven't moved MVS out of that field stretch of role. And why should they? He's a big, fast dude. And as we've seen, seen, over the past 2 weeks, he is starting to maybe grow some more chemistry with Rodgers. So kind of just like Sammy Watkins, there's no reason why you can't have someone like MVS on your bench because, hey, we want, guys in these awesome offenses. But also like Watkins, there is a reason why we haven't seen the sort of consistent production from these guys over the years, even though they've already had these roles. Realize that, we're probably not seeing, a come to Jesus moment from either of these dudes in terms of just, real consistent production on the way. I would prioritize, honestly, Allen Lazard. He hasn't been able to get back from this core injury here, but, it seems like he's super close at this point. And even if it takes a week with the snaps, I do think Lazard is the guy more likely to give us consistent production down the stretch. 3 more situations to break down, everybody. Thank you, as always, for listening to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. So Wayne Gallman has scored 5 touchdowns in their last 4 games, despite not playing 60% snaps in a game. I've been pretty just bearish on the guy throughout this kind of process because we saw Saquon struggling enough before he got injured behind this just horrendous offensive line, and a pretty rough just offense overall with the Clapper doing his thing. And, after him, Devontae Freeman came in and he was kind of commanding it, and then he was really commanding it, and then he got hurt. And since then, we've seen Wayne Gallman be the lead guy, but Alfred Morris has now gotten in, taking some early down work as well, and Deion Lewis continues to get pass down work throughout all this. So it's been a 3-back backfield ever since Devontae Freeman got hurt. Gallman's just been getting, not lucky per se. I mean, he's looking good out there. I think he has looked like the best, non-Saquon running back in this backfield all season. So I don't want to say lucky, but he has been, more touchdown dependent than I think people realize, with his performance. And again, not reaching that even 60% snap threshold in the game. So not someone I'm overly prioritizing, but hey, Freeman re-aggravated that ankle. He's back on the injured reserve list for at least, another 2 weeks. So Wayne Gallman certainly could be, in that low end RB2 conversation when the Giants take on the Bengals in week 12. Not a bad guy to stash and try to get ahead on that. We have Jalen Reagor and the Eagles taking on the Browns this week. Might be the 3rd straight game in Cleveland that just is just a weather mess. It doesn't seem like as bad as the past few weeks, but early week forecasts are, showing some wind and precipitation. So freaking Baker Mayfield and company cannot catch a break. So maybe not the game, we'll be looking to prioritize these Eagles wide receivers. But in the first game back with Jeffrey, we did see some, interesting takeaways. And that was Reagor leading the way with 88% snaps. Fulgham was there as well with 88%. Greg Ward, 63%. Alshon all the way down at 27%. This is what we wanted to see. Fulgham has been the best wide receiver for the Eagles this whole season. Don't freaking take him off the field for Dusty, Alshon Jeffrey, and they did not. So that's great to see. But Reagor was one with the team high 7 targets. We saw Ward and Goddard with 6, Rodgers and Fulgham with 5. So look, I would not be shocked at all if Reagor leads the way the rest of the year. In this Eagles offense, I know Carson Wentz hasn't been, holding up his end in the bargain here more times than not throughout the season. And now he's not even running as much as we saw from before. So Carson Wentz not being, the great fancy asset that some of us hoped that he could be in 2020. But we still see them putting up, at least over 200 passing yards. And we see all throughout the league, even bad offenses can support 1 or 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers. So no, I don't think Reagor or even Fulgham at this point are going to be cracking the top 24 wide receivers anytime soon, but I do think they are pretty much cemented as the top 2 guys in Carson Wentz's pecking order, and I'm not afraid to pick up that guy and hope for some upside wide receiver 3 goodness down the stretch. Last situation to talk about is this Rams backfield. So Cam Akers got the first carry of last week, ended up getting a team high 10 carries and a team low 26% snaps. We saw Malcolm Brown get 41% snaps, 6 carries, 2 targets. Darrell Henderson 33% snaps, 7 carries and 1 target. So look, clearly they don't trust Cam Akers in the passing game. Malcolm Brown's their guy. They, if they get into the goal line situation and they have time to, substitute someone, they usually put Malcolm Brown in for just those short yardage situations. If Henderson will still get some as well. Again, just it's not helping matters because Brown isn't going anywhere. They trust him too much, and he's taken away not only the fantasy-friendly pass down snaps sometimes, but also those goal line situations. So this is pretty much the 3-headed committee from hell. We were talking about last week. This, potentially being the case coming out of the bye, them getting Akers more involved. Honestly, it was like a situation in Baltimore at this point where we don't have the quarterback stealing as many rush attempts or anything, but it's just like almost a rich man's version, if you can call it that, of the Ravens backfield situation, because at least these Rams running backs are getting all the offenses, opportunities inside the 5 and 10 yard line. But it's also a situation where Goff, hasn't made a habit of throwing to these guys really all season. And I just think there's such a low kind of touch ceiling at this point. As long as all three guys are staying involved, situation to stay away from. Hey, look, if there's a injury to anyone, I think we'd see Henderson, Brown, or even or Akers. Like any of these guys, if there's an injury to one, they all of a sudden become kind of borderline. The remaining two guys would each become borderline RB2 plays. But while all three are healthy, not the situation we want to target. That is going to do it, everybody. Thank you as always for listening to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. You can check me out on Twitter at iHartitz, IHARTITZ. Don't forget the Z. Things get weird pretty fast. If you do, tweet out these episodes every morning, and also got some good articles on the way. So thank you as always for tuning in. And until next time, take care, everybody.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.